Good morning, folks. Welcome back. Chris in central Pennsylvania. In what now appears to be an effort to shift gears after realizing the carnage that the ANC senior politicians have caused to South Africans, the misery and suffering they have created as a consequence of their arrogance, of their pathetic foreign policy, their juvenile behavior, mocking the United States, mocking Donald Trump, we now see an effort finally to reset this nonsense. But it's half-hearted. It's not just the ANC and its senior leadership. It's also their fawning press, telling fairy tales and continuing to insult America. First up, a News 24 report about Ramaphosa's visit to the American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa. Ramaphosa visited the American Chamber of Commerce on Thursday, April 9th, 2026, just a day after receiving the credentials of U.S. Ambassador Brent Bozell, an official whom the ANC has targeted, lied about, spread racist nonsense about, and the media have done the same thing, attacking him over a 1987 letter which he signed, which refused to accept a known terrorist group meeting with our Secretary of State, and claiming the likes of Fikile Mbalula, calling him an unrepentant racist, undiplomatic language by a senior ANC official for which there were no consequences. Ramaphosa said, "I understand that the ambassador wants to double the number of U.S. companies operating in South Africa. This is an ambition we wholeheartedly support that we hope to work together to achieve. No doubt, you would love to get your fingers on all kinds of equity handed to people based on their skin pigmentation with your racist, broad-based black economic empowerment program." He said, "Recently, we've had several positive signals from the United States." He added that South Africa was speaking with U.S. lawmakers and trade officials, including discussions around the renewal of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. Well, you're not technically even eligible for that. South Africa has abrogated property rights, a key component of qualification for the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. If South Africa remains in AGOA, which is back for 1 year, then this would be a clear violation of U.S. law. Senator Kennedy, no doubt, in the U.S. Senate, as well as Representative Ronnie Jackson, will reinvigorate their efforts to investigate and sanction the ANC should they be included in AGOA. Now, according to News 24, relations between Pretoria and Washington have been chilly since Trump returned to office. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. Saying tensions flared over false claims that South Africa is subjecting white farmers to a genocide and seizing their land. Actually, neither of those statements is true. That's not why tensions raised. Tensions raised because South Africa abrogated the rule of law. They passed legislation that is unconstitutional and violates Section 25 of their constitution, in clear violation of South African Constitution, in clear violation of international norms, in clear violation of United Nations standards, in clear violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. Lawlessness of the highest order. That is why relations are strained. And relations were strained long before Trump came to office. This is a disingenuous statement by News 24. Ramaphosa continued, "As we continue to work to strengthen economic ties, we are committed to rebuild political and diplomatic relations between our two countries." He noted that 600 American companies already work in South Africa and employ over 250,000 people. Well, the problem with this, of course, is that South Africa is not making any serious effort to repair these relations. This is all poppycock and window dressing, nothing more. In April of last year, the United States made it clear to visiting officials from South Africa, including members of the government national unity, who Ramaphosa then refused to meet with, that the United States had 5 key asks. If you want to improve relations, we have 5 requests. And Ambassador Bozell has outlined those. But key among those were the elimination of the racist legislation stealing equity from American companies. The racist legislation shall not be accepted. BEE must be removed from American companies. A disavowalment of the kill the Boer murderous hate speech that must be abrogated by the government. And an answer on South Africa's alignment with rogue states who start wars against Ukraine and who put Uyghurs in prison camps and harvest their organs, and a host of other issues that work against the United States' interests, including state support for state sponsors of terrorism like Tehran. The United States had 5 simple asks, that's a couple of them, and there's been no effort, there's been no movement. In addition to this, ladies and gentlemen, to this day, South Africa still does not have an ambassador designate named for the United States, so not taking this relationship seriously. There is no trade representative, no trade delegation. They've simply accepted the 10% tariffs after complaining about it. the 30% tariffs. So this is nonsense. Now, on top of Ramaphosa gaslighting South Africans, we also have the media doing the same thing on behalf of the ANC. The latest is America-hating, Trump-deranged Peter Bruce in Business Day, saying diplomats quietly rebuilding U.S.-South African ties. They're working behind the scenes to address American demands. Are they? How? How has that happened? He says very quietly, South Africa and the U.S. are rebuilding ties after a significant rupture triggered by President Trump after his return to the White House last year. See, that's dishonest. I've made it clear. I've presented the evidence over and over again. This rupture occurred beginning 25 years ago and has accelerated over the past decade. And during the Democratic administration of Joseph Biden, legislation was introduced by a Democrat and a Republican to investigate and sanction ANC politicians because of their actions against the United States interests. He said it isn't yet clear what a formal end to Trump's hostility might look like, but it's clear that the rubble caused by his cluster bombs of lies and fabrications about South Africa is beginning to be cleared. No, that's the fantasy land that you and Ramaphosa are living in as you gaslight South Africans with this dishonest drivel. Trump's not hostile to South Africa. If Trump was hostile to South Africa, you'd be out of the SWIFT banking system. If Trump was hostile to South Africa, American companies would be banned from trading there. If Trump was hostile to South Africa, we would embargo your goods and services. This is poppycock and lies. The hostility comes from Latuli House, and that's where it's always come from. And it's hard shift to the left, which makes no sense whatsoever and works against South Africans' interest. Peter Bruce continues, like many calamities Trump has visited upon the world, his patently false charge of genocide against whites in South Africa may never be withdrawn. They'll be buried like his claims on Greenland or Canada, or his threats to pull the U.S. out of NATO, and the world will move on. The world will not move on. This is a fantasy land spoken by an editor living in a country that has no value geostrategically for virtually anyone on the planet. Now, I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but this isn't 1985, and the world isn't dependent on South Africa's gold or its resources or the Cape of Good Hope. The bottom line here is lies, the genocide. You are the people perpetrating. See who mentions genocide? Peter Bruce. He brings it up. Trump on 3 occasions has brought this up on his own volition. The rest of the time, it's in response to asinine questions from the media asked about genocide. And there is a genocide in South Africa, a cultural genocide, a clear, unambiguous, legally authorized effort by the ANC and black politicians to obliterate the language of Afrikaners and coloreds. Afrikaans. That is a cultural genocide and one of the steps on the path to genocide. So whether there's a genocide or not really isn't germane. Racial persecution is the issue, and that's the basis for Trump's actions, not this fantasy land that Mr. Bruce is living in. He says the reality now between Washington and Pretoria is quite different from a year ago. Our ambassador, Ibrahim Rasool, had been unceremoniously bundled out of America, well, with good reason. He was an unrepentant and unapologetic race hustler as ambassador. President Ramaphosa was preparing to visit the United States, which would see Trump deliberately try to humiliate him. No, once again, this is a lie. If Trump wanted to humiliate Cyril Ramaphosa in that visit, he would have shown video of Ramaphosa saying Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. There are no farm murders in South Africa. Then he would have shown pictures of butchered South African farmers. That would have humiliated Ramaphosa. If he wanted to humiliate Ramaphosa, he would have shown footage of Ronald Mullah spreading lies and nonsense. Or Gwede Mantashe. If they want the minerals, they better give us the aid. Or Fikile Mbalula. Trump made no effort to humiliate Ramaphosa. This is cognitive dissonance of the highest order. Complete nonsense. People who cannot divorce themselves from emotion. If Trump wanted to humiliate Ramaphosa, he could have done it in such a fashion. The videos shown were not of members of the African National Congress who've been abusing the United States. They were former members of the African National Congress. One who was a sitting president singing the song, "Kill the White Farmer," as a sitting president, Jacob Zuma. If he wanted to humiliate Ramaphosa, he could have done it. He did not. Trump was exasperated. There's no abusive behavior by him. The lies spread by Ramaphosa in that meeting were unbelievable. Not to mention his racist commentary. Have you met my white Minister of Agriculture? Mr. Bruce never comments on the racial tension that Ramaphosa brought to that room. That meeting set off a flurry of delegations from mainly Afrikaner groups hoping to gather some domestic political advantage to the U.S. That's poppycock. Those groups hoped to temper down and turn the temperature down. The last, led by Freedom Front Plus leader Corny Mulder, returned with a list of demands from the White House. Claims today had long been transmitted to South Africa, though in the absence of an ambassador there, it's difficult to know to whom the demands were delivered. Well, Peter Bruce, you know damn well that South Africa has a charge d'affaires, and it has a diplomatic mission. And even if you have a secretary, the list could have been communicated to them. So stop your bullshit nonsense. This is disgusting. These lies that you spread and the platform that you have misleading people. Anyway, enough. Ramaphosa and Peter Bruce are living in a fantasy land. Once again, the media running cover for its overlords in the African National Congress. To what end? Why does the media still support the African National Congress? And why do they continue to have cognitive dissonance about the facts? What is going on here? Will we discover one day that the media is paid by the ANC? I doubt that. The ANC doesn't have any money. How could they possibly pay them? Maybe with state resources. But this fawning nonsense, projecting and protecting the African National Congress, a party that has betrayed the liberation struggle, a party that has betrayed South Africans, a party that has stolen so much money that it's incalculable. The list of corruption scandals grows by the day. Every day, another corruption scandal. No services, no electricity, potholes the size of tank traps, stolen rail lines, all the foundries closing, hundreds of thousands of jobs, industrial sector gone, the deindustrialization, the returning of South Africa to the bush under the ANC. Now the racist changes in education, intellectually dishonest, creating the next generations of racists. Shame on the ANC and shame on members of South Africa's media who perpetuate lies and have zero objectivity. Trump is not a friend of Ramaphosa, and his return to office finally touched off something that should have happened 15 or 20 years ago, a review of the antagonistic and abusive behavior of the African National Congress towards the United States. So while Ramaphosa talks to you about a new day, let's remember all the other broken promises. The $100 billion in foreign direct investment he promised when he came in office. No farmers are being murdered in South Africa. Another lie. And all the other lies he's given to South Africans. His answer on Pala Pala. $580,000 in U.S. currency smuggled into South Africa and then hidden in a couch. Stolen by domestic workers and their cohorts. Illegally extradited across international boundaries and purportedly tortured. While the South African police reported no break-ins, no criminal acts at any VIP-protected residence or property during that fiscal year. Lies, 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 more lies. It's utter poppycock. What say you, South Africa, Mzansi? Cheers.